it's great that we talk about Harry Kane because he's obviously, all the attention is now on him. He hurt his ankle, not for the first time in the match against Darmstadt. I did a piece on whether he's going to break Robert Lewandowski's goal-scoring record, not knowing that his ankle was actually seriously injured while I was writing it, because that came out afterwards. And I did actually put in the piece, one of the big factors is whether he's going to stay healthy or not. Right now, his pace is actually too low to break Lewandowski's goal-scoring record too. He needs to not increase it by much, but a little bit, But that aside, if Harry Kane is out for longer, because we don't know until the scans come, right? And more about this, but the ankle has been a source of concern in the past. I think Bayern Munich season is essentially over if Harry Kane is out for an extended period of time. And we've already talked about this. I don't mean the Bundesliga season. That's over already. No matter Harry Kane is out, he can score another 20, 30 goals until the end of the season. It won't matter because Leverkusen are going to win anyways. But what I mean is the Champions League. Just like Dortmund, I think that I actually favor Bayern over Arsenal. I think I'm one of the few in that, but here's my reasoning is because I think if Bayern Munich get a result in London, they'll go through because they will win. I think they will win in the Allianz Arena. I think they just will. That goes completely out of the window if Harry Kane isn't fit. If Harry Kane isn't fit for that game, Bayern will have no chance whatsoever. The question then for you, Seb, is Harry Kane going to be fit for this game? Like, how has he dealt with this in the past?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Manu, because you mentioned how many times he's suffered ankle injuries. And the ankle is a joint that doesn't get better.
No,
it gets progressively worse. It's the grades, obviously. What you see when he comes back from long-term injuries is when he plays himself back to fitness, he has a kind of clunkiness where he's not quite in line and in step with the game around him. And so you see sort of a declining standard in his touch, less of an ability to knit the play, to drop into those kind of deep positions and play that big switch that he likes, which opens up on the other side of the pitch. So if it's a serious injury, it's kind of a non-point anyway because he's not going to make Arsenal.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth saying that until the scans come back, anytime he suffers any kind of ankle injury, a club is right to be incredibly cautious around it just because of his history. I think certainly up until the 2019 season, he'd suffered an ankle injury in each of the previous 3 seasons. And none of them were as a result of a weakening of his ankle. They were all just unfortunate contact injuries.
Yeah,
all things which were unlucky and they occurred by chance. They were contact
just like
injuries.
This one, like he rattled the post. It was
exactly
such a fluke, right?
So it's not, but in a way that's good because it's not descriptive of any problem with him. Actually, he's been incredibly durable over the last few years.
Yeah,
and so me saying, his ankle, it's a little bit lazy on my part. It's just that happens to be his injury history, unfortunately. And when he comes back, he does have a little bit of a pattern of needing a few games and a few weeks to actually become as fluid on the ball as Bayern got used to.
He's a big guy too. I mean, I think
he's a powerful guy.
People don't realize. I don't mean big as in fat, but he has a huge
if you stand
chest.
next to him, yeah,
he's a big guy.
We've both stood alongside him in the mix zone, and you get a sense for him. He's like an old-fashioned centre forward.
Totally.
Yeah, like he's sort of the same build as like a Luca Toni, for instance. Not quite. I think Toni
not as tall, but I felt like because you know how tall I am, and
I do.
Yeah,
you're a monster of a man. Yeah.
So I kind of felt like he's almost as tall and big as me.
Yeah. And
so I was like, whoa, this is like, you never really get that sense. But so what I mean by that is like someone who of that height I have a history of ankle and knee injuries. I know that it takes longer to get back because unfortunately you also need to move that mass. And so the mobility is like your strength comes back really fast, but it's like all this other stuff that's like you your comfort level of having to move your massive body is something that's kind of like takes a little bit longer. And that kind of makes me think, didn't he have a special shoe designed for him as well? Isn't that the reason why he went with Skechers?
Very possibly. I don't know. I am interested though I want to dig into your optimism around Bayern, because I don't share it. So I'm curious.
I actually think that it's kind of funny that Tuchel is now leaving, because I actually think I think that if we play the season again from here on, Leverkusen could possibly still win it, but it'd be very tight. Because I think that Tuchel has all the players playing where he wants them to play. He has guys like Gnabry coming back, Musiala's form is ticking up.
Playing really well, Musiala.
He has actually in Dyer and De Ligt, I actually think that's a really strong back pairing. I think Joshua Kimmich should have been right back a long time ago. Pavlovic is the find of the season. What an amazing player.
Hey, it's really interesting. When I was last in Munich, which was probably 3 weeks ago, maybe just a bit more, I was amazed by how many fans had his name on the back of the jersey. Not Munich. Amazed because he's an academy product, but
Munich born and raised.
Exactly, and so like I that is kind of rational to me, but at the same time, like the speed with which his popularity is gaining pace is quite interesting to me.
Yeah, and Munich loves. And I mean this in a very endearing way, so don't get this wrong. We love our Yugos, anyone from the former Yugoslavia space. I grew up with lots of them, because unlike the other communist countries, they were free to travel and work, right? So 1860s biggest club legend is Petar Radenkovic, Serbian, right? And that goes all the way back to the 60s. So, there's always been a strong connection with them anyways, and he's not only Yugoslavian or Serbian, he's also born and raised in Munich, right? So I think there is that, he hooked people right away.
I think he's deserved. I mean, beyond
deserved. He's incredible.
Yeah. I don't want to make it sound like I'm presenting him as some kind of embellishment, because he's played ever so well, and actually I think he really deserves his call up by the national team. It was just the speed with which I suppose he had been embraced, because it was based on, I think at the time he'd only made 4 Bundesliga starts by the time I was last there. And it's a great story, and I suppose also kind of represents a little bit maybe about what the club have lost recently in terms of the connection to the region and a lack of players coming through. That makes some sense.
I mean, Stanisic is another one, right? Like he plays.
That's why that hurts, man. That's why that hurts as much as it does.
Totally, he represents Croatia, but born and raised in Munich. And again, from a part of the Munich population, because Munich has I think it actually has the biggest immigration population of all cities in Germany. And there's a lot of Italians, there's a lot of Yugoslavian, Turkish, of course, as well, right? A lot of French people too. And so being from Munich often trumps being German, if that makes sense. And I think that's what it does here. Of course, now he represents Germany as well, that's going to make him go through the roof. But yeah, I mean, to go back to this, my optimism with Bayern, I think that Tuchel is almost freed of the shackles of the policies or the politics of the club. And that allowed him to put Kimmich at right back. That allowed him to put all the players where he thinks they're the best. And look, the second leg against Lazio was incredible. Then they go and beat Mainz 8-1. They had really no problems. I guess, yes, it's Darmstadt. Arsenal is a different beast. Don't get me wrong.
They played very well against Darmstadt.
They did play against
moments.
Exactly. And then it just feels like they're hitting their form at just the right time. And it's too late for the Bundesliga. I'm 100% convinced of that. But it might be just in time for the Champions League. Because in the past, it's often been the other way around, right? That they hit the form so early on. The Bundesliga title was won. There was nothing to play for them anymore, and then they would go out in the Champions League. This time around, this is the added factor, this is the only title hope. There's nothing else. So I think that if they get a result in London on their current form, and this is the big if, Harry Kane is fit, I think they have a pretty good chance.
I suppose I share your optimism about Kane, because Kane has a wonderful record against Arsenal. I think he's the leading scorer in the history of the North London derby. But to me, I don't think there's a blueprint to beating this Arsenal at the moment because they've been pretty successful. But
Porto showed it.
I suppose that
I don't think Bayern can play like that.
Well, this is the problem. Like I from that Porto side, I saw a team that blocked up the middle of the pitch, sat quite deep. But I think they had a bit of an emotional hold over Arsenal. I think they're a little bit more savvy, a bit smarter in that game. And Arsenal pretty likely to come through. To me, I don't see that. I don't see a Bayern the players that you need to block up the middle of the pitch. I think Pavlovic is a ball player.
Yeah.
I don't think Goretzka's an 8, clearly. I worry about what happens when Arsenal get bodies around their centre backs. Yeah, because
we've seen that this season, right? We've seen that many times against Leipzig, against Leverkusen. I mean, the only team that couldn't do it was Dortmund, right?
Yeah, well, you and I started the season at the Super Cup. We sat next to each other and watched Leipzig rip through the middle in transition. Every time there was an offensive transition, Bayern looked terrified. I don't think that's ever changed. Like I think they've improved in certain areas. I think that vulnerability is still there. And if you have that as a side, the last team I want to play is Arsenal.
Yeah, but Arsenal's Champions League record has been so bad this year. I mean, yes, they're through, but like I have not seen many games where they convinced me.
Yeah.
And that is really the flip side of it, is that, Bayern are very vulnerable, but this Arsenal team is too. In the Champions League, not in the Premier League. In the Premier League, obviously, they've been incredible.
They look excellent in the Premier League. I suppose you could take a little bit of solace from the fact that, well, the Bundesliga kind of is over, and so Tuchel can possibly justify not going through the Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday cycle and just saying to players like, certainly someone like Goretzka, who physically he's had a bit of a difficult time the last couple of years.
Yep.
Sané probably, Musiala, Kane maybe.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a little bit difficult if the Lewandowski record is in sight, but Arsenal can't do that, clearly. Arsenal can't afford to lose or drop a point against City and Liverpool in that sort of three-way title race.
And Arsenal has other title options. Like, how realistic is it for Arsenal to win the Champions League? Because look at the gauntlet that they have to walk through. Next is Man City.
City. I don't see anybody getting through Man City. So Bayern, Arsenal, anyone.
So... I mean, everything can happen in 2 legs, right? But you're right. Man City is the favorites to win the Champions League in my books as well. Although I never counted Real Madrid, never ever make that mistake. But to stay on point is for Bayern though. Interestingly enough, they have been there before, where the Champions League was their last route to win a title, and that was of course in 2012 when they lost the final to Chelsea, and the drama that happened afterwards basically led to this 11 titles in a row, right? But I could see Tuchel and the Bayern players say, this is it. This is the only thing we can win, and we're going to throw everything at it, and we're going to disregard everything else. And I think that can make a big difference.
Well, in a strange kind of one of those funny symmetries that European football throws up every now and again, if you go back to that Chelsea defeat, that Chelsea team was terrible.
Yeah, it was.
It got
horrendous.
Oh yeah, it was. Obviously, they got rid of Adria Villas-Boas. Their head coach is Roberto Di Matteo. Like, you had fullbacks playing centre half. You had a team that was really gaffer taped together, and somehow the kind of the professional pride of some fairly disaffected senior players, Drogba, Terry, Lampard, Cech. Like, if you have individual players in the Champions League, you have a chance, always.
Yeah,
always.
That's how Madrid does it so many times, right?
For sure. Like, how many Real seasons in La Liga were not all that impressive, and yet in European football, they have that curious reserve of, it's not quite self-belief, but just wisdom, I guess.
And I think this group of Bayern players might have that, which is really weird. And it's funny that you mentioned this Chelsea side, because I was living in London that year, and I remember watching that final, and they had no business getting into extra
never
time.
Never got past Barcelona. They should probably never have got past Benfica.
And they should have gotten smashed 3 or 4-0 in the final by Bayern. Yeah, it's the Champions League can be really bizarre that way, and that's why I have this weird sense of optimism for Bayern and their fans. I'm not a Bayern fan. with the jersey that just fell down
Your
shows
1860 jersey has deserted you, but
but it's just a weird one. I just sense, like Stefan made this joke. I think that because 7 years ago Bayern smashed Arsenal 10-2 in the round of 16. It's a completely different scenario, of course. I think this Bayern team is a bit on a mission in this competition. I think that is the difference here.
I want to share your optimism. I'm a Tottenham fan. I think Arsenal proved too strong. I think Arsenal are a super impressive side. And my fear is that Bayern take an absolute hammering in London.
We'll see. Speaking of super impressive sides, though, let's switch gears.